The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Parva. Section 279, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, and while the chaste Sita was dwelling there afflicted with melancholy and grief on account of her lord, attired in mean garb, with but a single jewel on the marital thread on her wrist, and incessantly weeping, seated on a stone, and waited upon by Rakshasa women, Ravana, afflicted by the shafts of the god of desire, came to her and approached her presence. And inflamed by desire, that conqueror in battle of the gods, the Danavas, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, and the Kimpurushas, attired in celestial robes and possessing handsome features, decked with jeweled earrings and wearing a beautiful garland and crown, entered the Asoka woods, like an embodiment of the vernal season. And dressed with care, Ravana looked like the Kalpa tree in Indra's garden. But though adorned with every embellishment, that inspired her only with awe, like a beautified banyan in the midst of a cemetery. And that night wanderer, having approached the presence of that slender-waisted lady, looked like the planet Saturn in the presence of Rohini. And smitten with the shafts of the god of the flowery emblem, he accosted that fair-hipped lady, then affrighted like a helpless doe, and told her these words, "Thou hast, O Sita, shown thy regard for thy lord too much. O thou of delicate limbs, be merciful unto me. Let thy person be embellished now by these maids in waiting. O excellent lady, accept me as thy lord. And, O thou of the most beautiful complexion, attired in costly robes and ornaments, take thou the first place among all the women of my household. Many are the daughters of the celestials and also the Gandharvas that I possess. I am lord also of many Danava and Daitya ladies. 140 millions of Pisachas, twice as many man-eating Rakshasa of terrible deed, and thrice as many Yaksha do my bidding. Some of these are under the sway of my brother who is the lord of all treasures. In my drinking hall, O excellent lady of beautiful thighs, Gandharvas and Apsaras wait on me as they do on my brother. I am again the son of that regenerate Rishi Visravas himself of high ascetic merit. I am renowned, again, as the fifth regent of the universe. And, O beautiful lady, of food and edibles and drinks of the very best kind, I have as much as the Lord himself of the celestials. Let all thy troubles consequent on a life in the woods cease. O thou of fair hips, be my queen, as Mandodari herself." Thus addressed by him, the beautiful princess of Vaidha, turning away and regarding him as something less than a straw, replied unto that wanderer of the night. And at that time the princess of Vaidha, that girl of beautiful hips, had her deep and compact bosom copiously drenched by her inauspicious tears shed ceaselessly. And she who regarded her husband as her god, answered that mean wretch, saying, "By sheer luck it is, O king of the Rakshasas, that I am obliged to hear such words of grievous import spoken by thee. Blessed be thou, O Rakshasa fond of sensual pleasures, let thy heart be withdrawn from me. I am the wife of another, ever devoted to my husband, and, therefore incapable of being possessed by thee. A helpless human being that I am, I cannot be a fit wife for thee. What joy can be thine by using violence towards an unwilling woman? Thy father is a wise Brahmana, born of Brahma and equal unto that Lord himself of the creation. Why dost thou not therefore thyself, being equal to a regent of the universe, observe virtue? Disgracing thy brother, that king of the Yakshas, that adorable one who is the friend of Maheswara himself, that lord of treasures, how is it that thou feelest no shame?" Having said these words, Sita began to weep, her bosom shivering in agitation, and covering her neck and face with her garments. And the long and well-knit braid, black and glossy, falling from the head of the weeping lady, looked like a black snake. And hearing these cruel words uttered by Sita, the foolish Ravana, although thus rejected, addressed Sita once more, saying, "O lady, let the god having the Makara for his emblem burn me sorely. I will however on no account, O thou of sweet smiles and beautiful hips, approach thee, as thou art unwilling. What can I do to thee that still feelest a regard for Rama, who is only a human being and therefore our food?" Having said those words unto that lady of faultless features, the king of the Rakshasa made himself invisible then and there and went away to the place he liked. And Sita, surrounded by those Rakshasa women, and treated with tenderness by Trijata, continued to dwell there in grief. Thus ends the 279th section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 280, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, meanwhile the illustrious descendant of Radhu, along with his brother, hospitably treated by Sugriva, continued to dwell on the breast of the Malyavat hill, beholding every day the clear blue sky. And one night, while gazing from the mountain top on the bright moon in the cloudless sky surrounded by planets and stars and stellar bodies, that slayer of foes was suddenly awakened to a remembrance of Sita by the cold breezes fragrant with the perfumes of the lily, lotus and other flowers of the same species. And virtuous Rama, dejected in spirits at the thought of Sita's captivity in the abode of the Rakshasa, addressed the heroic Lakshmana in the morning saying, "Go Lakshmana and seek in Kishkindia that ungrateful king of the monkeys, who understands well his own interest and is even now indulging in dissipations, that foolish wretch of his race whom I have installed on a throne and to whom all apes and monkeys and bears owe allegiance, that fellow for whose sake, O mighty armed perpetuator of Radhu's race, Vali was slain by me with thy help in the wood of Kishkindia. I regard that worst of monkeys on earth to be highly ungrateful, for O Lakshmana, that wretch hath now forgotten me who am sunk in such distress. I think he is unwilling to fulfill his pledge, disregarding from dullness of understanding, one who hath done him such services. If thou findest him lukewarm and rolling in sensual joys, thou must then send him, by the path Vali hath been made to follow, to the common goal of all creatures. If on the other hand, thou seest that foremost of monkeys delight in our cause, then O descendant of Kakutstha, shouldst thou bring him hither with thee. Be quick, and delay not." Thus addressed by his brother, Lakshmana, ever attentive to the behests and welfare of his superiors, set out taking with him his handsome bow with string and arrows. And reaching the gates of Kishkindia, he entered the city unchallenged. And knowing him to be angry, the monkey king advanced to receive him. And with his wife, Sugriva the king of the monkeys, with a humble heart, joyfully received him with due honors. And the dauntless son of Sumitra then told him what Rama had said. And having heard everything in detail, O mighty monarch, Sugriva, the king of the monkeys with his wife and servants, joined his hands, and cheerfully said unto Lakshmana, that elephant among men, these words, "I am, O Lakshmana, neither wicked, nor ungrateful, nor destitute of virtue. Hear what efforts I have made for finding out Sita's place of captivity. I have dispatched diligent monkeys in all directions. All of them have stipulated to return within a month. They will, O hero, search the whole earth with her forests and hills and seas, her villages and towns and cities and mines. Only 5 nights are wanting to complete that month, and then thou wilt with Rama hear tidings of great joy." Thus addressed by that intelligent king of the monkeys, the high-souled Lakshmana became appeased, and he in his turn worshipped Sugriva. And accompanied by Sugriva, he returned to Rama on the breast of the Malyavat hill. And approaching him, Lakshmana informed him of the beginning already made in respect of his undertaking. And soon thousands of monkey chiefs began to return, after having carefully searched the three quarters of the earth, viz., the north, the east and the west. But they that had gone towards the south did not make their appearance. And they that came back represented to Rama, saying that although they had searched the whole earth with her belt of seas, yet they could not find either the princess of Vaidha or Ravana. But that descendant of Kakutsta's race, afflicted at heart, managed to live yet, resting his hopes of hearing Sita's tidings on the great monkeys that had gone towards the south. After the lapse of 2 months, several monkeys seeking with haste the presence of Sugriva, addressed him, saying, O king, that foremost of monkeys, the son of Pavana, as also Angada, the son of Vali, and the other great monkeys whom thou hadst dispatched to search the southern region, have come back and are pillaging that great and excellent orchard called Madhuvana, which was always guarded by Vali and which hath been well guarded by thee also after him. Hearing of this act of liberty on their part, Sugriva inferred the success of their mission, for it is only servants that have been crowned with success that can act in this way. And that intelligent and foremost of monkeys communicated his suspicions to Rama. And Rama also from this guessed that the princess of Mithila had been seen. Then Hanuman and the other monkeys, having refreshed themselves thus, came towards their king, who was then staying with Rama and Lakshmana. And, O Bharata, observing the gait of Hanuman and the color of his face, Rama was confirmed in the belief that Hanuman had really seen Sita. Then those successful monkeys with Hanuman at their head, duly bowed unto Rama and Lakshmana and Sugriva. And Rama then taking up his bow and quiver, addressed those monkeys, saying, Have you been successful? Will ye impart life unto me? Will ye once more enable me to reign in Ayodhya after having slain my enemy in battle and rescued the daughter of Janaka? With the princess of Vaidha unrescued, and the foe unslain in battle, I dare not live, robbed of wife and honor. Thus addressed by Rama, the son of Pavana replied unto him saying, I bring thee good news, O Rama, for Janaka's daughter hath been seen by me. Having searched the southern region with all its hills, forests, and mines for some time, we became very weary. At length we beheld a great cavern. And having beheld it, we entered that cavern which extended over many yojanas. It was dark and deep and overgrown with trees and infested by worms. And having gone a great way through it, we came upon sunshine and beheld a beautiful palace. It was, O Raghava, the abode of the Daitya Maya. And there we beheld a female ascetic named Prabhavati engaged in ascetic austerities. And she gave us food and drink of various kinds. And having refreshed ourselves therewith and regained our strength, we proceeded along the way shown by her. At last we came out of the cavern and beheld the briny sea, and on its shores, the Salya, the Malaya and the great Durdura mountains. And ascending the mountains of Malaya, we beheld before us the vast ocean. And beholding it we felt sorely grieved in mind, and dejected in spirits and afflicted with pain and famishing with hunger, we despaired of returning with our lives. Casting our eyes on the great ocean extending over many hundreds of yojanas and abounding in whales and alligators and other aquatic animals, we became anxious and filled with grief. We then sat together, resolved to die there of starvation. And in course of conversation we happened to talk of the vulture Jatayu. Just then we saw a bird huge as a mountain, of frightful form, and inspiring terror into every heart, like a second son of Vinata. And coming upon us unawares for devouring us, he said, Who are ye that are speaking thus of my brother Jatayu? I am his elder brother, by name Senpati, and am the king of birds. Once upon a time, we two, with the desire of outstripping each other, flew towards the sun. My wings got burned, but those of Jatayu were not. That was the last time I saw my beloved brother Jatayu, the king of vultures. My wings burned, I fell down upon the top of this great mountain where I still am. When he finished speaking, we informed him of the death of his brother in a few words and also of this calamity that hath befallen thee. And, O king, the powerful Sampati, hearing this unpleasant news from us, was greatly afflicted and again inquired of us, saying, Who is this Rama and why was Sita carried off and how was Jatayu slain? Ye foremost of monkeys, I wish to hear everything in detail. We then informed him of everything about this calamity of thine and of the reason also of our vow of starvation. That king of birds then urged us to give up our vow by these words of his, Ravana is indeed known to me. Lanka is his capital. I beheld it on the other side of the sea in a valley of the Trikutta hills. Sita must be there. I have little doubt of this. Hearing these words of his, we rose up quickly and began, O chastiser of foes, to take counsel of one another for crossing the ocean. And when none dared to cross it, I, having recourse to my father, crossed the great ocean which is 100 yojanas in width. And having slain the Rakshasas on the waters, I saw the chaste Sita within Ravana's harem, observing ascetic austerities, eager to behold her lord, with matted locks on head, and body besmeared with filth, and lean, and melancholy and helpless. Recognizing her as Sita by those unusual signs, and approaching that worshipful lady while alone, I said, I am, O Sita, an emissary of Rama and monkey begotten by Pavana. Desirous of having a sight of thee, hither have I come travelling through the skies. Protected by Sugriva, that monarch of all the monkeys, the royal brothers Rama and Lakshmana are in peace. And Rama, O lady, with Sumitra's son, hath enquired of thy welfare. And Sugriva also, on account of his friendship with Rama and Lakshmana, inquireth of thy welfare. Followed by all the monkeys, thy husband will soon be here. Confide in me, O adorable lady, I am a monkey and not a Rakshasa. Thus addressed by me, Sita seemed to meditate for a moment and then replied to me, saying, From the words of Avindhya I know that thou art Hanuman. O mighty armed one, Avindhya is an old and respected Rakshasa. He told me that Sugriva is surrounded by counselors like thee. Thou mayst depart now. And with these words she gave me this jewel as a credential. And indeed, it was by means of this jewel that the faultless Sita had been able to support her existence. And the daughter of Janaka further told me as a token from her, that by thee, O tiger among men, a blade of grass, inspired with mantras and thus converted into a fatal weapon, had once been shot at a crow while ye were on the breast of the mighty hill known by the name of Chitrakuta. And this she said as evidence of my having met her and hers being really the princess of Vaidha. I then caused myself to be seized by Ravana's soldiers, and then set fire to the city of Lanka. Thus ends the 288th section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 281, Draupadi Hamna Parva continued. Markandeya said, it was on the breast of that very hill where Rama was seated with those foremost of monkeys that great monkey chiefs at the command of Sugriva, began to flock together. The father-in-law of Bali, the illustrious Sushena, accompanied by 1,000 crores of active apes, came to Rama. And those two foremost of monkeys endued with mighty energy, viz., Gaya and Gavaksha, each accompanied by 100 crores of monkeys, showed themselves there. And, O king, Gavaksha also of terrible mien and endued with a bovine tail, showed himself there, having collected 60,000 crores of monkeys. And the renowned Gandhamadana, dwelling on the mountains of the same name, collected 100,000 crores of monkeys. And, the intelligent and mighty monkey known by the name of Panasa mustered together 52 crores of monkeys. And that foremost and illustrious of monkeys, named the Dimukha of mighty energy, mustered a large army of monkeys possessed of terrible prowess. And Jambuvan showed himself there with 100,000 crores of black bears of terrible deeds and faces having the Tilaka mark. And these and many other chiefs of monkey chiefs, countless in number, O king, came there for aiding Rama's cause. And endued with bodies huge as mountain peaks and roaring like lions, loud was the uproar that was heard there made by those monkeys running restlessly from place to place. And some of them looked like mountain peaks, and some looked like buffaloes. And some were of the hue of autumnal clouds, and the faces of some were red as vermilion. And some rose high, and some fell down, and some cut capers, and some scattered the dust, as they mustered together from various directions. And that monkey army, vast as the sea at full tide, encamped there at Sugriva's bidding. And after those foremost of monkeys had mustered from every direction, the illustrious descendant of Radhu, with Sugriva by his side, set out in an auspicious moment of a very fair day under a lucky constellation, accompanied by that host arrayed in order of battle, as if for the purpose of destroying all the worlds. And Hanuman, the son of the wind god, was in the van of that host, while the rear was protected by the fearless son of Sumitra. And surrounded by the monkey chiefs, those princes of Radhu's house with fingers cased in guana skin, shone, as they went, like the sun and the moon in the midst of the planets. And that monkey host armed with stones and sala and thala trees, looked very much like a far-extending field of corn under the morning sun. And that mighty army, protected by Nala and Nila and Angada and Kratha and Menda and Dvivida, marched forth for achieving the purpose of Raghava. And encamping successively, without interruption of any kind, on wide and healthy tracts and valleys abounding with fruits and roots and water and honey and meat, the monkey host at last reached the shores of the briny sea. And like unto a second ocean, that mighty army with its countless colors, having reached the shores of sea, took up its abode there. Then the illustrious son of Dasaratha, addressing Sugriva amongst all those foremost monkeys, spoke unto him these words that were suited to the occasion: This army is large. The ocean also is difficult to cross. What contrivance therefore commends itself to thee for crossing the ocean? At these words, many vainglorious monkeys answered, We are fully able to cross the sea. This answer, however, was not of much use, as Saul could not avail of that means. Some of the monkeys proposed to cross the sea in boats, and some in rafts of various kinds. Rama, however, conciliating them all, said, This cannot be. The sea here is a full 100 yojanas in width. All the monkeys, ye heroes, will not be able to cross it. This proposal therefore that ye have made is not consonant to reason. Besides, we have not the number of boats necessary for carrying all our troops. How again can one like us raise such obstacles in the way of the merchants? Our army is very large. The foe will make a great havoc if a hole is detected. Therefore, to cross the sea in boats and rafts doth not recommend itself to me. I will, however, pray to the ocean for the necessary means. Foregoing food, I will lie down on the shore. He will certainly show himself to me. If, however, he doth not show himself, I will chastise him then by means of my great weapons that are more blazing than fire itself and are incapable of being baffled. Having said these words, both Rama and Lakshmana touched water and duly laid themselves down on a bed of kusa grass on the seashore. The divine and illustrious ocean, then that lord of male and female rivers, surrounded by aquatic animals, appeared unto Rama in a vision. And addressing Rama in sweet accents, the genius of the ocean, surrounded by countless mines of gems, said, O son of Kausalya, tell me what aid, O bull among men, I am to render thee. I also have sprung from the race of Ikshatu and am therefore a relative of thine. Rama replied unto him saying, O Lord of rivers, male and female, I desire thee to grant me a way for my troops, passing along which I may slay the 10-headed Ravana, that wretch of Pulastya's race. If thou dost not grant the way I beg of thee, I will then dry thee up by means of my celestial arrows inspired with mantras. And hearing these words of Rama, the genius of Varuna's abode, joining his hands, answered in great affliction, I do not desire to put any obstacle in thy way. I am no foe of thine. Listen, O Rama, to these words, and having listened do what is proper. If at thy command, I get a way for the passage of thy army, others then from strength of their boss, will command me to do the same. In thy army there is a monkey of the name of Nala, who is a skillful mechanic. And endued with great strength, Nala is the son of Tashtri, the divine artificer of the universe. And whether it is wood or grass or stone, that he will throw into my waters, I will support the same on my surface, and thus wilt thou have a bridge over which to pass. And having said these words, the genius of the ocean disappeared. And Rama awaking, called Nala unto him and said, Build thou a bridge over the sea. Thou alone, I am sure, art able to do it. And it was by this means that the descendant of Kakutsta's race caused a bridge to be built that was 10 yojanas in width and 100 yojanas in length. And to this day that bridge is celebrated over all the world by the name of Nala's bridge. And having completed that bridge, Nala, of body huge as a hill, came away at the command of Rama. And while Rama was on this side of the ocean, the virtuous Vibhishana, the brother of the king of the Rakshasas, accompanied by 4 of his counselors, came unto Rama. And the high-souled Rama received him with due welcome. Sugriva however feared, thinking he might be a spy. The son of Raghu, meanwhile, perfectly satisfied with Vibhishana in consequence of the sincerity of his exertions and the many indications of his good conduct, worshipped him with respect. And he also installed Vibhishana in the sovereignty of all the Rakshasas and made him his own junior counselor and a friend of Lakshmana's. And it was under Vibhishana's guidance, O king, that Rama with all his troops crossed the great ocean by means of that bridging course of a month. And having crossed the ocean and arrived at Lanka, Rama caused its extensive and numerous gardens to be devastated by his monkeys. And while Rama's troops were there, 2 of Ravana's counselors and officers, named Sukha and Sarana, who had come as spies, having assumed the shape of monkeys, were seized by Vibhishana. And when those wanderers of the night assumed their real Rakshasa forms, Rama showed them his troop and dismissed them quietly. And having quartered his troops in those woods that skirted the city, Rama then sent the monkey Angada with great wisdom as his envoy to Ravana. Thus ends the 281st section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 282, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, having quartered his army in those groves abounding with food and water and with fruits and roots, the descendant of Kakutsta began to watch over them with care. Ravana, on the other hand, planted in his city many appliances constructed according to the rules of military science. And his city, naturally impregnable on account of its strong ramparts and gateways, had 7 trenches, that were deep and full of water to the brim and that abounded with fishes and sharks and alligators, made more impregnable still by means of pointed stakes of Kadira wood. And the ramparts, heaped with stones, were made impregnable by means of catapults. And the warriors who guarded the walls were armed with earthen pots filled with venomous snakes, and with resinous powders of many kinds. And they were also armed with clubs, and firebrands and arrows and lances and swords and battle axes. And they had also sutturnus and stout maces steeped in wax. And at all the gates of the city were planted movable and immovable encampments manned by large numbers of infantry supported by countless elephants and horses. And Angada, having reached one of the gates of the city, was made known to the Rakshasas. And he entered the town without suspicion or fear. And surrounded by countless Rakshasas, that hero in his beauty looked like the sun himself in the midst of masses of clouds. And having approached the hero of Pulastya's race in the midst of his counselors, the eloquent Angada saluted the king and began to deliver Rama's message in these words, that descendant of Raghu, O king, who ruleth at Kosala and whose renown hath spread over the whole world, saith unto thee these words suited to the occasion. Accept thou that message and act according to it. Provinces and towns, in consequence of their connection with sinful kings incapable of controlling their souls, are themselves polluted and destroyed. By the violent abduction of Sita, thou alone hast injured me. Thou however wilt become the cause of death to many unoffending persons. Possessed of power and filled with pride, thou hast before this, slain many rishis living in the woods and insulted the very gods. Thou hast slain also many great kings and many weeping women. For those transgressions of thine, retribution is about to overtake thee. I will slay thee with thy counselors. Fight and show thy courage. O wanderer of the night, behold the power of my bow although I am but a man. Release Sita, the daughter of Janaka. If thou dost not release her, I shall make the earth divested of all Rakshasas with my keen-edged arrows. Hearing these defiant words of the envoy, King Ravana bore them ill, becoming senseless with wrath. And thereupon 4 Rakshasas skilled in reading every sign of their master, seized Angada like 4 hawks seizing a tiger. With those Rakshasas however, holding him fast by his limbs, Angada leaped upwards and alighted on the palace terrace. And as he leaped up with a great force, those wanderers of the night fell down the earth, and bruised by the violence of the fall, had their ribs broken. And from the golden terrace on which he had alighted, he took a downward leap. And overleaping the walls of Lanka, he alighted to where his comrades were. And approaching the presence of the Lord of Kosala and informing him of everything, the monkey Angada endued with great energy retired to refresh himself, dismissed with due respect by Rama. The descendant of Raghu then caused the ramparts of Lanka to be broken down by a united attack of all those monkeys endued with the speed of the wind. Then Lakshmana with Vibhishana and the king of the bears marching in the van, blew up the southern gate of the city that was almost impregnable. Rama then attacked Lanka with 100,000 crores of monkeys, all possessed of great skill in battle, and endued with reddish complexions like those of young camels. And those crores of greyish bears with long arms, and legs and huge paws, and generally supporting themselves on their broad haunches, were also urged on to support the attack. And in consequence of those monkeys leaping up and leaping down and leaping in transverse directions, the sun himself, his bright disk completely shaded, became invisible for the dust they raised. And the citizens of Lanka beheld the wall of their town assume all over a tawny hue, covered by monkeys of complexions yellow as the ears of paddy, and grey as shirisha flowers, and red as the rising sun, and white as flax or hemp. And the Rakshasas, O king, with their wives and elders, were struck with wonders at that sight. And the monkey warriors began to pull down pillars made of precious stones and the terraces and tops of palatial mansions. And breaking into fragments the propellers of catapults and other engines, they began to cast them about in all directions. And taking up the Saturnis along with the discs, the clubs, and stones, they threw them down into the city with great force and loud noise. And attacked thus by the monkeys, those Rakshasas that had been placed on the walls to guard them, fled precipitately by hundreds and thousands. Then hundreds of thousands of Rakshasas, of terrible mien, and capable of assuming any form at will, came out at the command of the king. And pouring a perfect shower of arrows and driving the denizens of the forest, those warriors, displaying great prowess, adorned the ramparts. And soon those wonders of the night, looking like masses of flesh, and of terrible mien, forced the monkeys to leave the walls. And mangled by the enemy's lances, numerous monkey chiefs fell down from the ramparts, and crushed by the falling columns and gateways, numerous Rakshasas also fell down to rise no more. And the monkeys and the brave Rakshasas that commenced to eat up the foe, struggled, seizing one another by the hair, and mangling and tearing one another with their nails and teeth. And the monkeys and the Rakshasas roared and yelled frightfully, and while many of both parties were slain and fell down to rise no more, neither side gave up the contest. And Rama continued all the while to shower a thick downpour of arrows like the very clouds. And the arrows he shot, enveloping Lanka, killed large numbers of Rakshasas. And the son of Sumitra, too, that mighty bowman incapable of being fatigued in battle, naming particular Rakshasas stationed on the ramparts, slew them with his cloth-yard shafts. And then the monkey host, having achieved success, was withdrawn at the command of Rama, after it had thus pulled down the fortifications of Lanka and made all objects within the city capable of being aimed at by the besieging force. Thus ends the 282nd section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 283, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, and while those troops thus withdrawn were reposing themselves in their quarters, many little Rakshasas and Pisachas owning Ravana as their leader, penetrated amongst them. And among these were Pavana, Patena, Jamba, Kara, Krodhavasa, Hari, Praruja, Aruja and Pragasa, and others. And as these wicked ones were penetrating the monkey host in their invisible forms, Vibhishana, who had the knowledge thereof, broke the spell of their invisibility. And once seen, O king, by the powerful and long-leaping monkeys, they were all slain and prostrated on the earth, deprived of life. And unable to endure this, Ravana marched out at the head of his troops. And surrounded by his terrible army of Rakshasas and Pisachas, Ravana, who was conversant with the rules of warfare like a second Usnas, invested the monkey host, having disposed his troops in that array which is named after Usnas himself. And beholding Ravana advancing with his army disposed in that array, Rama, following the mode recommended by Vrihaspati, disposed his troops in counter array for opposing that wanderer of the night. And coming up quickly, Ravana began to fight with Rama. And Lakshmana singled out Indrajit, and Sugriva singled out Virupaksha, and Nikavata fought with Tara, and Nala with Thunda, and Patusa with Panasa. And each warrior, advancing up to him whom he regarded as his match, began to fight with him on that field of battle, relying on the strength of his own arms, and that encounter so frightful to timid persons, soon became terrible and fierce like that between the gods and the Asuras in the days of old. And Ravana covered Rama with a shower of darts and lances and swords, and Rama also afflicted Ravana with his whetted arrows of iron furnished with the sharpest points, and in the same way Lakshmana smote the contending Indrajit with arrows capable of penetrating into the most vital parts, and Indrajit also smote Sumitra's son with an arrowy shower. And Vibhishana showered upon Prahasta and Prahasta showered upon Vibhishana, without any regard for each other, a thick downpour of winged arrows furnished with the sharpest points. And thus between those mighty warriors there came about an encounter of celestial weapons of great force, at which the three worlds with their mobile and immobile creatures were sorely distressed. Thus ends the 283rd section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 284, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, then Prahasta, suddenly advancing up to Vibhishana and uttering a loud yell struck him with his mace. But though struck with that mace of terrible force, the mighty-armed Vibhishana of great wisdom, without wavering in the least, stood still as the mountains of Himavat. Then Vibhishana, taking up a huge and mighty javelin furnished with 100 bells, inspired it with mantras and hurled it at the head of his adversary. And by the impetuosity of that weapon rushing with the force of the thunderbolt, Prahasta's head was severed off, and he thereupon looked like a mighty tree broken by the wind. And beholding that wanderer of the night Prahasta, thus slain in battle, Dhumraksha rushed with great impetuosity against the monkey host. And beholding the soldiers of Dhumraksha, looking like the clouds and endued with terrible mien, advancing up towards them, the monkey chief suddenly broke and fled. And seeing those foremost of monkeys suddenly give way, that tiger among monkeys, Hanuman, the son of Pavana, began to advance. And beholding the son of Pavana staying still on the field of battle, the retreating monkeys, O king, one and all quickly rallied. Then mighty and great and fearful was the uproar that arose there in consequence of the warriors of Rama and Ravana rushing against each other. And in that battle which raged terribly the field soon became miry with blood. And Dhumraksha afflicted the monkey host with volleys of winged shafts. Then that vanquisher of foes, Hanuman, the son of Pavana, quickly seized that advancing leader of the Rakshasa. And the encounter that took place between that monkey and the Rakshasa hero, is desirous of defeating the other, was fierce and terrible, like that of Indra and Prahlada in days of yore. And the Rakshasa struck the monkey with his maces and spiked clubs, while the monkey struck the Rakshasa with trunks of trees unshorn of their branches. Then Hanuman, the son of Pavana, slew in great wrath that Rakshasa along with his charioteer and horses, and broke his chariot also into pieces. And beholding Dhumraksha, that foremost of Rakshasa, thus slain, the monkeys, abandoning all fear, rushed against the Rakshasa army with great valor. And slaughtered in large numbers by the victorious and powerful monkeys, the Rakshasas became dispirited and fled in fear to Lanka. And the surviving wreck of the Rakshasa army, having reached the city, informed King Ravana of everything that had happened. And hearing from them that Prahasta and that mighty archer Dhumraksha had both with their armies been slain by the powerful monkeys, Ravana drew a deep sigh and springing up from his excellent seat said, "The time is come for Kumbhakarna to act." And having said this, he awoke, by means of various loud-sounding instruments, his brother Kumbhakarna from his deep and prolonged slumbers. And having awaked him with great efforts, the Rakshasa king, still afflicted with anxiety, addressed the mighty Kumbhakarna and said unto him when seated at his ease on his bed, having perfectly recovered consciousness and self-possession, these words, "Thou, indeed, art happy, O Kumbhakarna, that canst enjoy profound and undisturbed repose, unconscious of the terrible calamity that hath overtaken us. Rama with his monkey host hath crossed the ocean by a bridge, and disregarding us all is waging a terrible war against us. I have stealthily brought away his wife Sita, the daughter of Janaka, and it is to recover her that he hath come hither, after having made a bridge over the great ocean. Our great kinsmen also, Prahasta and others, have already been slain by him. And, O scourge of thy enemies, there is not another person save thee, that can slay Rama. Therefore, O warrior, putting on thy armor, do thou set out this day for the purpose of vanquishing Rama and his followers. The two younger brothers of Dushana, viz., Vajravga and Promedin, will join thee with their forces." And having said this unto the mighty Kumbhakarna, the Rakshasa king gave instructions to Vajravga and Promedin as to what they should do. And accepting his advice, those two warlike brothers of Dushana quickly marched out of the city, preceded by Kumbhakarna. Thus ends the 284th section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 285, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, then Kumbhakarna set out from the city accompanied by his followers. And soon he beheld the victorious monkey troops encamped before him. And passing them by with the object of seeking out Rama, he beheld the son of Sumitra standing at his post, bow in hand. Then the monkey warriors speedily advancing towards him, surrounded him on all sides. And then they commenced to strike him with numberless large trees. And many amongst them fearlessly began to tear his body with their nails. And those monkeys began to fight with him in various ways approved by the laws of warfare. And they soon overwhelmed that chief of the Rakshasas with a shower of terrible weapons of various kinds. And attacked by them thus, Kumbhakarna only laughed at them and began to eat them up. And he devoured those foremost of monkeys known by the name of Chala, and Chandachala, and Vajravahu. And beholding that fearful act of the Rakshasa, other monkeys were frightened and set forth a loud wail of fear. And hearing the screams of those monkey leaders, Sugriva boldly advanced towards Kumbhakarna. And that high-souled king of the monkeys swiftly approaching the Rakshasa, violently struck him on the head with the trunk of a sala tree. And though the high-souled Sugriva always prompt in action broke that sala tree on the head of Kumbhakarna, he failed to make any impression on that Rakshasa. And then as if roused from his torpor by that blow, Kumbhakarna stretching forth his arms seized Sugriva by main force. And beholding Sugriva dragged away by the Rakshasa, the heroic son of Sumitra, that delight of his friends, rushed towards Kumbhakarna. And that slayer of hostile heroes, Lakshmana, advancing towards Kumbhakarna, discharged at him an impetuous and mighty arrow furnished with golden wings. And that arrow, cutting through his coat of mail and penetrating into his body, passed through it outright and struck into the earth, stained with the Rakshasa's blood. Kumbhakarna then, having his breast thus bored through, released the king of monkeys. And taking up a huge mass of stone as his weapon, the mighty warrior Kumbhakarna then rushed towards the son of Sumitra, aiming it at him. And as the Rakshasa rushed towards him, Lakshmana cut off his upraised arms by means of a couple of keen-edged shafts furnished with heads resembling razors. But as soon as the two arms of the Rakshasa were thus cut off, double that number of arms soon appeared on his person. Sumitra's son, however, displaying his skill in weapons, soon by means of similar arrows cut off those arms also, each of which had seized a mass of stone. At this, that Rakshasa assumed a form enormously huge and furnished with numerous heads and legs and arms. Then the son of Sumitra arrived, with a Brahma weapon, that warrior looking like an assemblage of hills. And rent by means of that celestial weapon, that Rakshasa fell on the field of battle like a huge tree with spreading branches suddenly consumed by heaven's thunderbolt. And beholding Kumbhakarna endued with great activity and resembling the Asura Vritra himself, deprived of life and prostrated on the field of battle, the Rakshasa warriors fled in fear. And beholding the Rakshasa warriors running away from the field of battle, the younger brother of Dushana, rallying them rushed in great wrath upon the son of Sumitra. Sumitra's son, however, with a loud roar, received with his winged shafts both those wrathful warriors, Vajravga and Promedin, rushing towards him. The battle then, O son of Pritha, that took place between those two younger brothers of Dushana on the one hand and the intelligent Lakshmana on the other, was exceedingly furious and made the bristles of the spectators stand on end. And Lakshmana overwhelmed the two Rakshasas with a perfect shower of arrows. And those two Rakshasa heroes, on the other hand, both of them excited with fury, covered Lakshmana with an arrowy hail. And that terrible encounter between Vajravja and Promedin and the mighty armed Lakshmana lasted for a short while. And Hanuman, the son of Pavana, taking up a mountain peak rushed towards one of the brothers, and with that weapon took the life of the Rakshasa Vajravga. And that mighty monkey Nala also, with a large mass of rock, crushed Promedin, that other younger brother of Dushana. The deadly struggle however between the soldiers of Rama and Ravana, rushing against one another, instead of coming to an end even after this, raged on as before. And hundreds of Rakshasas were slain by the denizens of the forest, while many of the latter were slain by the former. The loss however in killed of the Rakshasas was far greater than that of the monkeys. Thus ends the 285th section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 286, Draupadi Harana Parva continued. Markandeya said, learning that Kumbhakarna had with his followers fallen in battle, as also that great warrior Prahasta and Dhumraksha, two of mighty energy, Ravana then addressed his heroic son Indrajit saying, O slayer of foes, slay thou in battle Rama and Sugriva and Lakshmana. My good son, it was by thee that this blazing fame of mine had been acquired by vanquishing in battle that wielder of the thunderbolt, the thousand-eyed lord of Sachi. Having the power of appearing and vanishing at thy will, slay thou, O smiter of foes, my enemies by means, O thou foremost of all wielders of weapons, of thy celestial arrows received as boons from the gods. Rama and Lakshmana and Sugriva are incapable of enduring the bare touch of thy weapons. What shall I say therefore of their followers? That cessation of hostilities which could not be brought about by either Prahasta or Kumbhakarna in battle, be it thine, O mighty armed one, to bring about. Slaying my enemies with all their army by means of thy keen-edged shafts, enhance my joy today, O son, as thou didst once before by vanquishing Vasava. Thus addressed by him, Indrajit said, so be it, and encased in mail he quickly ascended his chariot, and proceeded, O king, towards the field of battle. And then that bull amongst Rakshasas, loudly announcing his own name, challenged Lakshmana endued with auspicious marks, to a single combat. And Lakshmana, thus challenged, rushed towards that Rakshasa, with his bow and arrows, and striking terror into his adversary's heart by means of the flapping of his bowstring on the leathern case of his left hand. And the encounter that took place between those warriors that defied each other's prowess, and each of whom was desirous of vanquishing the other, and both of whom were conversant with celestial weapons, was terrible in the extreme. But when the son of Ravana found that he could not by his arrows gain any advantage over his adversary, that foremost of mighty warriors mustered all his energy. And Indrajit then began to hurl at Lakshmana with great force numberless javelins. The son of Sumitra however cut them into fragments by means of his own keen-edged arrows. And those javelins, thus cut into pieces by the keen-edged arrows of Lakshmana, dropped down upon the ground. Then the handsome Angada, the son of Bali, taking up a large tree, rushed impetuously at Indrajit and struck him with it on the head. Undaunted at this, Indrajit of mighty energy sought to smite Angada with a lance. Just at that juncture however Lakshmana cut into pieces the lance taken up by Ravana's son. The son of Ravana then took up a mace and struck on the left flank that foremost of monkeys, the heroic Angada, who was then staying close beside him. Angada, the powerful son of Bali, little recking that stroke, hurled at Indrajit a mighty sala stem. And hurled in wrath by Angada for the destruction of Indrajit, that tree, O son of Pritha, destroyed Indrajit's chariot along with his horses and charioteer. And thereupon jumping from his horseless and driverless car, the son of Ravana disappeared from sight, O king, by aid of his powers of illusion. And beholding that Rakshasa, abundantly endued with powers of illusion, disappear so suddenly, Rama proceeded towards that spot and began to protect his troops with care. Indrajit however, with arrows obtained as boons from the gods, began to pierce both Rama and mighty Lakshmana in every part of their bodies. Then the heroic Rama and Lakshmana both continued to contend with their arrows against Ravana's son, who had made himself invisible by his powers of illusion. But Indrajit continued to shower in wrath all over those lions among men his keen-edged shafts by hundreds and thousands. And seeking that invisible warrior who was ceaselessly showering his arrows, the monkeys penetrated into every part of the firmament, armed with huge masses of stone. Them as well as the two brothers, however, the invisible Rakshasa began to afflict with his shafts. Indeed, the son of Ravana, concealing himself by his powers of illusion, furiously attacked the monkey host. And the heroic brothers Rama and Lakshmana, pierced all over with arrows, dropped down on the ground like the sun and the moon fallen down from the firmament. Thus ends the 286th section in the Draupadi Harana Parva of the Vana Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.